All right, all right. What's up, good people? It is Saturday. Hope you're having a good weekend so far. If you are joining us today, please be sure to leave a comment, hit the share button so we can spread the love. My name is Matt from Music Producer School. Thanks for joining me today. And we're going to finish up our discussion this week on drums. So, once again, I wanted to start off this whole program by starting from the very beginning. A lot of people want to get right into, programming crazy synth sounds and mastering and all this other kind of complicated stuff. But what I've found over the course of my career is that if you start with a good foundation, which is typically good sounds with a good arrangement, and of course, good musical parts, everything else becomes a lot easier. I've had songs that I mixed for weeks that just never sounded that great because the songs were not good themselves. And that's what I'm trying to basically, like I said before, teach you how to problem solve so you can identify problems in your musical productions before you start trying to mix and master and then you start realizing, oh shit, this sucks. So, once again, folks, if you're just joining us, my name's Matt from Music Producer School. Please leave me a comment. Let me know if you have any questions today or about any type of topics that you'd like for me to cover. Be sure to hit share on the stream. And today I wanted to do a little work on some drum patterns to finish off our discussion on drums. So let's move it over to Ableton here. And what I wanted to basically convey today was how important your kick patterns are in a drum arrangement. And I wanted to do a little example of that today. I was playing around with this little sample, and I figured it'd be kind of cool to show you the beginning stages of how I would approach this. And I wanted to show you a couple things you can try with your kick drum patterns. What we talked about last time is how, percussion, especially percussion, can basically create a groove for your beat. However, the kick drum, and this kind of goes in hand with my experience as a DJ, the kick drum, the sound, of course, is super important, and we'll talk more about actual samples of kick drums and sounds at a later time. But what I wanted to talk about today was more of the pattern and the arrangement of your kick drum. Because again, if you get that right, you can pick a lot of different types of samples and it'll still sound good and it'll still work. But if your kick pattern sucks or if it's not performing its job correctly, especially I know as a DJ, people would bring me their tracks and they would, say, hey, play this in the club. And I would, test it out, just listen to it, and I could tell immediately that it wasn't going to work in a club with a room full of people that have never heard the song before because the pattern was not powerful enough. In other words, with music, you can actually physically move people, especially in a club environment where, you have these big speakers and, people are really feeling it. Well, if your song comes on and your kick pattern is just not moving them the right way, it's not going to go over well, and then you're making me, the DJ, look bad. So that's why I always paid attention to this kind of stuff. So today I was messing around with this sample, once again from the Kingsway library. Let me see if I can play a little snippet here of it. So that's just the first part of the sample that I pulled up, and I said, okay, let's do maybe kind of like a hip hop kind of like a future type of sound here. So another important aspect of drums, and this is something I'll do a whole nother topic of discussion on, is tempo. I could talk about every range of tempo there is from about 70 BPM all the way up to about 150 BPM. All of these ranges, and they go in about 10 beat 10 BPM increments, they tend to function differently for different genres of music. So I'm going to go into more detail for that, but just know that today I'm going to be working at about 80 BPM. Also, I wanted to mention really quickly to my FL Studio users, yes, I didn't forget about you. I got something in FL Studio I'm going to show you today as well, and we're going to be doing a lot more FL Studio stuff very soon. So don't worry about that. I'll get back to that in just a little bit. So today, let's check out this sample, and we'll flip over to FL in just a little bit. So what I'm going to do really quickly here is I want to warp this sample so that I can get it lined up on the beats. So again, we started out the lesson this week talking about bars or measures and beats. So you can see here I have 4 measures right here, and these lines in between are each 1 beat per in the measure, the quarter notes. So that's measure 1, beat 1, measure 1, beat 2, beat 3, and beat 4, and so on. So I want to make this total sample that I'm going to use 4 bars or 4 measures long, but you can see that it's a little bit longer right here. So I'm going to actually put a little warp marker in here, and you can do this in all the DAWs, but if you're just following along right now, just know that the idea is you want to get the sample on the beat. So now that I have the sample, and then I also need to be sure to be starting our sample from the correct place. So we're starting on the 1 and I'm ending on 5, so that's a 4-bar loop. All right, cool. So we've got that going. I'm going to maybe tighten this up just a little bit here on the measures. But again, when you're doing especially sample-based stuff like this, I find it's kind of cool to not quantize every single beat of a sample like this. Again, it's kind of that percussion thing we talked about earlier, where that little bit of drift off of the grid is what actually can give it the feel. Sometimes it doesn't work that great, but oftentimes, especially with samples like this, it works pretty cool. So let's now go in and give ourselves a little basic drum pattern to work on here. And I'm just going to get it to where we can see just about the 5 bars. And I'm going to throw a MIDI clip in here. And let's find ourselves a good snare to use with this first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the sample, and I'm going to just start clicking around in my drum rack here and see if I can find us a good snare sound to play with. Okay, so snare 13 I think sounds pretty cool. So let's go ahead and put that in on our, like I said in the previous lesson, typically your snare is just going to go on 2 and 4, and then you can always add some accent stuff around that. So let's find our snare 13, there it is. I'm going to put that on the 2 and the 4, and let's make sure it's hitting as hard as it possibly can. Once again, that's the velocity, which is how hard or soft your sample will play when it's triggered. So let's get that in there. So again, this is going to kind of be a quick recap of some of the things we discussed on the last lesson. If you missed it, be sure to go back. It was part 2 where I was talking more about the groove and how you can add stuff around the snare to kind of give it a little more feel. So let's see if we can find us another snare that's a little more of an accent snare, meaning it's going to be shorter and not as prominent as our main snare here. So something like this maybe could work because it's kind of short. And I want to be sure again to bring the velocity down on this so that it's more of just an accent. And then another important thing when you're drum programming is I do like to vary those velocities almost for just about every note for percussion type stuff, anything that's going to add groove, because it's not just where the notes happen, it's also the volume, because we're trying to almost replicate that real drummer feel. So I'll just kind of copy that over. And then another cool thing I wanted to talk about, and we'll get into some more discussion about this again later on, but another thing I like to do when you're varying accent or percussion type parts, you don't have to use the same sample for every percussion or accent. So for like this one, I'm using this, but maybe like this sample right here, I could grab all these guys and bring them down. I believe it was number 5. Yeah. And then I want to bring these in a little bit earlier. So I actually, instead of doing it that way, I'm going to bring these back up here. And then this last one for each measure. And again, you're always trying to problem solve here. So because these two notes right here are so close together, it's almost sounding a little weird to me to have a separate sample. So let's do those first two notes together, like again, like a snare playing, a real drummer playing a snare drum. And then this last note on the bar for each bar or measure, we're going to vary that one instead. And we'll bring this one down. Yeah, that sounds a lot better to me. So now here's where the magic comes in. I'm just going to put in a basic kick pattern here. Make sure my velocity's up here. So I'm just going to put one right on the downbeat of each measure. All right, so that's cool. But of course, we can't just roll with a kick on the downbeat of each measure. That's going to be boring. So what I want to do here is, especially when you're using 808s, kind of it goes in what we talked about the first lesson of this week with that ADSR thing. You want to make sure that you're not having your kick drums overlap each other, especially with 808s, because there's so much bottom end. If they start overlapping each other, you're going to get all kinds of muddiness, and you'll never get the power that you want out of your kick drums. So what we need to do, and this applies for every DAW, but this is how you do it in Ableton. I'm going to go to this kick drum, and you can see first of all, and another important thing you want to look for, see, so like right here, Ableton is warping this kick drum for me. I don't want that, because what it's doing is it's actually stretching or shrinking the kick drum. So I don't want it to be able to do that. So I'm going to turn the warp off. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that this is set to one shot. So that means it's going to not overlap these kick drums. Because again, when we start adding notes, we don't want them to be overlapping with each other. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start putting in some more notes. let's go with this first and see how this sounds. And then I'm going to start, basically what I like to do with everything in production is break things down individually. So you get a little pattern, and like I just did there, I just copied it over, right? Well, the next thing you want to do is now start looking at each measure individually, and we're going to customize each measure 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that's how you start building cooler, more interesting parts. So the first measure is probably okay. And again, what you can do here is by making notes come a little sooner, you can make things be more anticipated and give them a little more urgency. So maybe in the intro, you want to just have, let's say, less notes. And then as the second measure comes in, we'll add this other one right here to kind of give a little more interest. So already I'm starting to get into a little more of arrangement mindset, which is, let's say this was our 4-bar, which typically we'd probably do an 8-bar measure, for just so we don't spend too much time on this. This would be kind of like the simple 4-bar measure, we'll call it. And then at the end of a 4-bar phrase, typically, I like to do something a little different, which is almost, you can think of it as like a drum fill. And then just, again, I don't like to spend too much time on mixing and stuff like that, but if you are working on something, especially making a beat like this, it is a little more fun to get things kind of even just mentally in the headspace that you want to be in to create a track. So this snare is sounding super dry to me, so let's throw some reverb on it. And then for our accent snare, another thing you can do when you're designing percussion or accent parts like this is you can actually filter a lot of the high end out, and what that's going to do is it's not going to make it sound like a snare so much. It's going to be more of like an accent. So I'm going to take a little bit of the high end out of this accent snare. Cool. So you can hear it kind of adds just a little. Basically, you're always in music production, you're always looking for there to be contrast. So if you have a bright main snare on 2 and 4, don't have another bright snare on your accent beats, because that's going to start confusing the listener. You're always thinking of contrast. So we're going to filter out that accent snare a little bit like that. And then let's really quickly, let's throw in some hi-hats here to finish this off. And then another cool little trick that a lot of producers do is they'll put a clap at the end of a phrase. So like this 4-measure phrase that we got going here, let's put a clap right on that last snare. Yeah, clap number 8 sounds cool. And then let's start throwing in some hi-hats. Something nice and tight. So on hi-hats, I'm not going to go too far deep into this today, but another cool thing to think about when you're programming hi-hats is, especially when your snare hits, you can emphasize the snare by changing the hi-hat pattern right there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into a triplet grid. And I want to make that even a little bit faster. And then I'm going to get out of my triplet grid here and just do that little accent on that first part where the snare is hitting. So that's how we get those snare patterns going, where, like I said, if you do a little change up on the 2 and the 4, you'll start to get a little more emphasis on your snare. And then on that last beat where we did that fill with the kick drum, this is another cool little trick you can use if you're doing a pattern like a fill on your kick drum there. We can just copy this, and let's copy the same exact kick pattern, and we're going to put that on our hi-hat, and then once again the hi-hat will kind of emphasize that pattern. So let's see what we got now with that. Zoom out a little bit here. So again, I just kind of copied this hi-hat pattern, the same thing over and over again, so it gets a little boring. So once again, we're going to break it down measure by measure. First measure is cool, but then the second measure we're going to have to switch something up. So let's see another. So this is the perfect example right here. See how in measure 2, again, we need to switch it up, and oftentimes in the beginning when you're starting out as a producer, it is kind of hard to think about different patterns because you may work on this first measure for a while and you're like, okay, I like that, it's cool, but you work on it so much it gets stuck in your head and you're like, I don't know how to change it because you're so focused on that one pattern. But let me show you what you can do here to help with that. So on measure 2, we want to switch this up. Well, once again, we're taking this whole 4 measure phrase and we're breaking it down into measure 1, measure 2, measure 3, measure 4. You can do the same thing in each measure now and break it down in a measure to beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, and beat 4. So how about we just take beat 2 and we're going to move it over here. And then let's take beat 1 and switch it out like that. And then the same thing can be done within a beat as well. So now right here, I have this beat 4 in measure 2, and I can't stress how important of a concept this is, because so many times when I started off producing, I would get stuck in my mind of, man, I don't know how to switch this up, because you work on this one piece so long and then you don't really think about, oh, let me just break it down even further into smaller sections. So like measure 2, we're on beat 4 here. I just broke down beat 4 into 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. So let's just switch these around now. And then we've kind of got some stuff going on here where maybe we want to just get rid of that like that. So let's see what that sounds like. Cool. So now on measure 3, let's just grab this right here. Halfway through. And then we'll just throw those in right there. Let's see what we got. Now, another thing that's, again, I talked about at the first lesson of this week was this ADSR thing, attack, decay, sustain, release. I'm hearing that this hi-hat sounds like it's a little bit long. I kind of only want the snare to set the environment that this track is taking place in. And I'm kind of listening to the sample that we're using because it's a little bit spacey. So I want the snare, the reverb on it to say, okay, our drums are in that same kind of spacey vibe. But because the snare has reverb on it, my hi-hat is sounding like it's lasting a little bit longer than it should. So it's going to kind of confuse the listener at this moment, especially in the intro. So what I want to do is hi-hat 5. I want to go and use that ADSR thing I showed you at the beginning of the week, and I want to tighten it up a little bit. So let's go and do that to hi-hat number 5. So again, I can use the ADSR stuff, which was my attack, decay, sustain, and release. Another cool thing that you can do in Ableton, and again, this also works in all the other DAWs, but I can actually just take the length of my sample right here, and I can just shorten it as much as I want. So I'm going to solo just the hi-hat for a second. Now let's hear it with the rest of the drums. So listen to the difference. So I'm liking that for the intro. Let's check it out with the sample now. All right, and then now that I got a little bit more of a cohesive drum thing happening, my snare sounds like there's a little bit too much reverb on it now. So I'm gonna back that off a little bit and not so long of a reverb. All right, cool. So I wanted to kind of give you a more concrete example of an actual drum programming session and show you how that works. So the last thing I wanted to show you today, again, the most important concept so far I wanted to convey to you is breaking down these parts into smaller parts, and then you vary them that way, recombine them, and that's how you'll start getting more interesting sections to any of your beats or your productions that you're making. And this applies with everything, not just drums. You can do it with synths, especially bass lines, because bass lines tend to be, for lack of a better word, pretty basic. And what you can do to get interest is, again, break down your measures into smaller beats and then start switching around those beats. And you're going to find that just by doing that, you can, of course, the best thing, if you can do it, is just in your head. If you hear a part, you know, play it out on your keyboard or on your drum machine or whatever it may be. But sometimes when you get stuck, it's a lot easier to take these sections and just break them down and start flipping them around each other, and that'll inspire some new parts for you, and that's always great to do. So the last thing I wanted to show you is with, like I said, kick patterns. Let me show you how this works. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually create a new MIDI track, and I'm going to load up this other 808 drum machine that I have. And what I wanted to show you here is how, because again, we have a pretty basic kick pattern going on here, and especially with this style of music, you kind of want to have some variance in your kick patterns. So what I wanted to show you today is I have something called MIDI beat grids, and this isn't released yet on my store. It'll be released probably in the next week or two. But what I did was I actually went through, as in my experience as a DJ, I would have these tracks that would just always work great on the dance floor. And they were always, you know, of course, radio hits and whatnot. So I went through and I actually, in my DJ library, I sorted and found all of the songs that I played most often. And I mean, it was, you know, a few hundred songs. So I actually separated the songs by BPM. And then I analyzed each song, and I took the kick patterns out of each song and I put them into this MIDI pack. And that way you don't have to wonder if, you know, a lot of times if you get a MIDI pack or a sample pack or a loop pack, a lot of times you get a bunch of stuff that just doesn't work because it's just kind of filler. But this is all radio hits, big time DJ dance floor hits. So every one of these works. And I wanted to have something I could always use to quickly switch out my kick drums and see how much better it would make the track and see how much better this pattern would work in the track. So for example, right now we have this very basic kick pattern going. Go back down here to my kick drum. So it's not bad, but it's not the most interesting thing in the world. And again, this might be okay for an intro of a beat or a song, but we really need something that's going to get it moving, which means we need some more urgency. So what you can do with this beat grid pack is you can actually just go through and find your BPM, and actually any of these work at any BPM because they're all in MIDI, so they will shrink or expand to the BPM and the tempo of your project that you're working on. So what I can do now is I can find one of these patterns and just throw it in here on a MIDI track. And the way it's designed is I have the snare, I have a MIDI note placed on the 2 and the 4, and that's more just for reference so you know where the snare would typically be. So what I like to do is load these up, and then I'll just mute out that snare part because we already have a snare up here. And I'm also going to mute out this kick track that we started on this other drum kit. And now on this kit, let's take a listen to this. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring these notes up. And another thing I want to do is I want to listen and hear what key is this track in. So let me pull up my simple piano. And this is a quick little way, especially for drum programming with 808s. You always want to tune your 808 to your track. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to mute my drums and let's just listen to the sample. So that's my C note. Let's listen to the sample and see if we can figure out what key it's in. All right, that's it right there. So let's see what note that is. It's in A. So I want to make sure that I'm tuning my kicks that I just loaded up. They're going to come preloaded on C. I want to make sure this is going to an A. Now sometimes you may, especially with an 808 and the way it's designed, it may be right on the border of a semitone. So G sharp may work a little better, A may work a little better. We'll just have to listen to it with the track. Now let me bring this down an octave so it's nice and low. Cool little intro. Let's try it up an octave. So that was cool because the sample actually lifts a half semitone on the second part, so we could bring that up a semitone. Now again, the thing that I love to do with these is it's so easy because I can just start throwing in these different kick patterns from the MIDI beat grids. So this is cool, but since I know the note is now G sharp 2, I can just go in and let's try and throw something else in there. Again, I'm going to mute out those snares, and I'm going to bring it up to G2. That's cool. Let's try another one. See, this one's a lot busier. Let's see what this one sounds like. And again, that's what I love about this pack, because you can just instantly start dropping these in and testing them out. So this one has more of a triplet feel. The beat that we're doing is not so much a triplet feel, so that one's not really working as well. But again, you can just keep dropping some of these in and see what's going to work best for your production. Let's try and get us a nice and busier one there. All right, let's do this one. All right, cool. So the last thing I'm going to do, Bashtitha, what's up? Thanks for the question. Yeah, this VST, so I'm just using the built-in drum sampler from Ableton for most of my drums. And then this 808 that I'm using is called Kick Gods. And I cannot remember, it's called 808 Kick Gods, and I cannot remember. It looks like it's made by Big Works. I can't remember where I got it from, or when I got it, rather. But it's pretty cool. I like to use it for a lot of 808 stuff because it has this built-in distortion and filtering. It comes as a Contact, Native Instruments Contact plugin. So you'll need Native Instruments in order to load it up into Contact. But yeah, it's called 808 Gods. I'm sure you can Google it and find it. So the last thing I wanted to show you guys today with the 808s, like I said, that beat grid pack is super cool because you can just start dropping in MIDI clips. And the main thing is, you know that they're going to work typically because they're taken from songs that already do work. So that's always good to use. So the last thing I wanted to show you today with the 808 stuff is it's always cool with the 808s to do some pitch stuff. So for example, we can always throw in another little note here, and then I'm just going to raise it up another octave. And then that way you're going to actually hear it on that last part of the beat, raise up that octave. And then like on that last little run that we did, I'm going to throw that in, but I'm going to do it on the octave up there. So let's take a listen to that. I get all of it in there for you so you can see it all. Anytime, Bashtitha. Thanks for watching. All right, let's check this out now that we got some pitch. Let's throw a little more pitch in there. Let's do one lower down there too and see what that sounds like. Yeah, I kind of like that. I'm gonna just move this up. I don't think, let me see if I can squeeze this. There we go. Squeeze that down a little bit so now you can see all of them. Yeah, I'm kind of digging that. So let's check this out now. So we've got the regular kick here. We've got the low octave here. And then we've got the high octave up here. And I just literally dragged and dropped this from the MIDI clip pack up here. It's called MIDI Beat Grids. I'll let you guys know when it's available on my website. So let's check this out. So again, remember I was talking about the sample sounds like it goes up a half semitone right there. So let's just bring all of these up that one semitone so it'll match the sample a little bit better. Sweet. All right, you guys, I promised you that I would quickly do a little FL Studio today. So I'm going to flip over to FL. And I wanted to show you guys basically how you could throw these beat grids into your FL Studio session as well. So right here, I've got just a basic kind of beat set up. So let's actually let's see if we can get a, an 808 kind of thing here. Let's go with hip hop. And let me see if I can quit out of this. All right, so hip hop. And then let's change out this snare. I'm not going to worry about the sounds too much on this for this example. And let's actually use that 808 kick. Okay, so what I wanted to show you here is the same thing with these MIDI beat grids. So you can see here, I have them loaded up in the side browser here in FL. And again, they're all broken down by BPM. So what you can do is, let's show our piano roll here. I can once again just kind of drag and drop them into the piano roll. And then I'm going to just select those snares that we don't need. I'm just going to get rid of them. And then what I'm going to do in FL to make this a little bit simpler is FL by default is going to pitch the drums wherever you put them. So they're on 0, so they're going to be pitched way down. All you have to do is go into your sampler for your kick drum here. And then you want to click your envelope settings up here at the top left. And then just scroll down and you can see that the notes come on C0. Just right click on C0. And that's going to put your root note at C0. And that way the sample will play at the correct spot. So let me go ahead and put a few more snares in here for us to finish off the pattern. All right, cool. So pretty basic, but like I said, I just wanted to show you really quickly how you can do this in FL as well. So once again, I have my notes in here, but let's say I don't like that pattern. All I got to do, drag in a new pattern. I'm going to just get rid of my snares. And like I said, the cool thing about this is I can speed this stuff up as much as I want. And once again, just throw in a new pattern, get rid of my snares. and you can hear just how quickly you can start switching out these drum patterns. Now, the other important thing to remember here, I'm just showing you this with the basic, just the basic drum. What's up, Joey? Good to see you, dude. I'm showing you this with just basic drum patterns today. But the place where these MIDI beat grids really shine is when you have a full beat done. Hey, what's up, Quake? Thanks for joining today. I appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all share the stream so we can start building the community. And speaking of that, I wanted to mention something real quick before I finish up here. But anyway, you guys, the most important thing with these beat grids, like I said, I'm gonna probably put these out in the next week or two. They all work from songs that have already proven themselves on the radio or on the dance floor in the clubs. But where they really shine is when you finish a beat or you finish a production and you have all of the instruments, you have vocals going, all of that, and you can then start switching out your kick drum patterns really quickly. You will be amazed at how much these different patterns will change the feel of your song. So let's say you're trying to do a club hip hop song, but for some reason it just feels like it's a little slow. You like the tempo, but for some reason it just feels like it's dragging. Or let's say you have a section of your song that needs to change up from what you already have going through the rest of the song. That's where you can start grabbing these beat grids and literally just dragging and dropping. And you can see here as well, I have them named to where you can kind of tell what a lot of the songs were from. So like Hotline obviously is from Drake, Hotline Bling. We got The Stanky Leg. We got Throwed Off. I got some like future EDM trap songs in here. I've got some old Ludacris, What's Your Fantasy? I know I've got some Young Jock. All kinds of cool stuff in here. And like I said, this is just the 70 to 79 BPM folder. I've also got 80 to 89. I've got 90 all the way up to 140 BPM. And again, the beauty of these is you can change your tempo once you put them in and they'll adjust right along with your tempo. But believe me, when you start switching these out with your productions, after you already have your vocals and your instruments in there and you start switching out these kick drum patterns, you're going to be amazed at just how much they change the feel of your song. So I'll come back to that when I put them out and I'll remind you guys that they're available. But yeah, the last thing I wanted to show you all today was actually on the Facebook page. I wanted to show you to be sure and go in on the Facebook page, go and make sure that you like or you ask to join the Music Producer School community, because what I'm going to start doing in a few weeks, it's free to join right now, so you don't have to worry about paying anything. But what I'm going to start doing in a few weeks in our Music Producer School community is I want to get you guys to start posting your tracks, and I'm going to try and come in at least like once a week. And I'm going to actually listen to your tracks on Music Producer School live, and I'm going to critique them live. So I'll try and pick, like 1 or 2, maybe 3 tracks per session, and it's going to be you guys' tracks, so you can post up a SoundCloud or a YouTube link or something like that. And I'm actually going to let you kind of stand by while I'll listen to it live, and I'm going to critique your track and give you some tips. So let me see if I can grab the link here. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so I'm gonna grab this link, and I'm going to post it in the comments on Facebook right now. I think everybody, all you guys right now are watching on Facebook. If you're on another platform like YouTube or Twitch or something, just be sure, go hit up the Music Producer School on Facebook. It's at the Music Producer School. And I'm going to actually put this in the comments right now so that you guys can go and be sure to join the Music Producer School community. just click that you want to join. I'll accept you. And like I said, in the next few weeks, I'm going to start logging on probably at least once a week. I'm going to let you guys post up your tracks, and then I'm going to listen to them live while we're on together, and I'll start giving you notes and critiques and ways that you can make your tracks better. Everything from the samples you're using, the arrangement, the musical idea, the chords, the mixing, the mastering, the whole deal, the songwriting. So I want you guys to be sure to go and join the producer school community, because I'm going to start doing that in the next few weeks. I'm actually going out of town next week to work on a big project in another state that I've been working on for the past couple months, but I will be getting on here live still. I'm going to see how much time that I have next week. I may wind up just getting on for a few minutes just to kind of chat with some of you guys. And once again, if you guys have any questions whatsoever about how to make better beats, how to record vocals, how to do different genres of music, mixing, mastering, anything at all, be sure to leave me a comment or drop me a message in the Facebook page. And like I said, I will be back with the producer school schedule. I'll post up on Monday for next week so that you'll know what the schedule is and what the theme we're going to cover for next week. The first week we did music theory. This week we did drums. If you have any suggestions for a theme that you'd like me to cover over the whole week, be sure to drop me a comment and let me know. The final thing, you guys, is also, if you're on the Facebook page, look for the email sign up, because I'm going to start sending out stuff like discount codes and special like sample packs and stuff like that for free, just for being on the email list. So that would be super cool if you could sign up on the email list. That's also on the Facebook page, so just be sure to go there and look for it. All right, you guys, that's an hour for today. I think that's going to do it. I hope y'all learned something. Once again, if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up, and I will be back with the schedule on Monday for next week, and I will see you guys later. Y'all have a great weekend. I appreciate y'all watching, and I will see you next time. Have a great